Hey guys, welcome back to Into the Nothing. Thanks for joining us. I feel so honored. We're getting some really good traction with this podcast, and I'm having an absolute ball. And this episode is going to just be the cherry on top because I've got a guest that I reached out to not long ago, and she said yes. And I was like, yes. I'm like that with all my guests. I'm just like, yes, jackpot. And yeah, please, if you love this conversation, share it on your socials, tag me, tag our special guest. Let me know if you have any curiosities, if you're not sure about something, you disagree with something. I'm here for the conversation. So please reach out and open up. I'm really enjoying people reaching out and letting me know what they loved or they went back and listened to this episode. It's just such a fun experience. I'm just having a ball. And I'm putting it out there that Spotify pay me $1 million a year in the next few years to have this podcast on Spotify. So we need to get it out to the peeps. Thanks, guys. Claiming it. So today I have an exceptional human being. Her name is Elizabeth Ann Walker. And I'm just going to give a little, spiel to set some context for this fucking weapon of a human being. Elizabeth has guided hundreds of thousands of people to achieve complete personal breakthroughs and phenomenal personal and business growth. With over 25 years experience transforming the lives of many people, Elizabeth's goal is to assist leaders, which we all are, I love that, to create the reality that they choose to live, impacting millions on a global scale. She's a thought leader who has worked alongside people like Gary Vaynerchuck, Elena Cardone, Kerwin Rae, and so many more. And so I'm just looking at her website right now, and holy shit, as we've just said, 25 years experience. She has impacted the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And to date, she's had 6,759 students and, 43 people in 43 countries know this woman. So how lucky are we to have Elizabeth with us on Into the Nothing? Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. What an introduction. I always listen to the introductions that people give me and go, who's she talking about? Oh, that's me.
Holy shit, I'm amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you hear it back like that. And it also is not nearly enough. And what I mean by that is there are still people who are hurting, there are still people who are hungry, and there are still people who are not living the life that they're satisfied with. And until that exists for everybody and everybody can actually wake up every morning and go, I fucking love my life, then there's more work to be done. So
God. And where did this drive for impact? Because holy, I know that you're an master NLP trainer and you've got so many different modalities under your belt. Can we just talk about your story? Why do you care so much about people and about impact and you're just so driven and there's so many things that I love about you, which I can't wait to touch on today and delve into. Yeah, can you tell us how'd you get here? Crazy. That's a big question, but I know
that's like a whole podcast in itself. So if I go back to when I was in my childhood, the person who had the most influence on me was my grandfather. And he was a captain in the Australian Army during World War II and led many battalions into war. And I remember asking him, so I always liked people and I was always an extrovert, and his biggest message to me was blow your own trumpet because no one else will. And I was like, what does that mean, for a long time? And it's probably only really in the last 5 years that I'm like, oh, I get it now. I really get it. Because the bigger you get, the more haters you get as well. And if you don't say how great you are, then you can be in a room where everyone's like, whoa, it's that chick. We don't like her. We don't resonate with what she says. She's got this great life and she doesn't look like she tried very hard. And so that was the one piece of advice that was the thing. The other thing was he used to say, when people asked him how he was, he used to say, well, I'm not dead. And I thought that was strange and in some ways a little negative. And I questioned him on it when I was about 7. And he said, well, what a stupid question for people to ask how you are. Do they have no idea of the suffering that's going on in the world? They can see that I'm walking down the street. They can see that I've clearly eaten and I've slept in a bed. Why are they asking me how they are? Imagine the impact they would have if they asked other people how they were. And I started thinking about that and I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And it led me on a quest that created a lot of drama when I was a child. Because every time someone asked how I was, I would say, do you actually care how I am?
Oof.
Or is this just a greeting? And I did that from the time I was about 7. And so when a teacher would ask how I was, do you really care about me? Or are you just asking that because that's what you're supposed to do because society told you? And the other thing my grandfather did was whenever I had a question about anything, like I'm old, so we didn't have computers when I was a kid. We had encyclopedias. And if I asked about anything, he would tell me to go and read it. Not only read it though for my own satisfaction, I had to read it and then do a presentation to him about it. So whatever I didn't know about, I would have to go away and research. And so that led me to love research and to love words more than anything. Right?
Something I wanted to speak to you about today. I've written it down next to me. I'm like, this woman loves words. Keep going.
Like I love words. I love the structure of words. I love the structure of sentences. I find it incredibly exciting when people use correct language. And I find it incredibly saddening when people speak and have no idea what the words they're saying mean. And I think that grammar teaching in Australia and all over the world has done people a disservice by teaching modern meanings of words rather than the root of where the word came from, because I'm a deep believer in energetics, and the energy of the ancestry of a word carries weight. And so a word that is used outside its original context or for a purpose other than its original purpose is a word that carries with it the energetics of something that someone may not understand. And I remember my mom, when I was little, she used to say to me, people who swear are unintelligent because they can't think of something better to say. And I thought about that and I said to her, well, then what would you say? And she said, well, I just think you should say corrugated iron. At least it has a purpose and it's useful. And so again, me being the good little girl, I used to go around going, why do you say that? Why don't you just say corrugated iron? It has more purpose. It's more useful. That got me into a lot of great friendships during high school. And I believe that my ancestry has led me to where I am. So I come from a long line of successful people, successful not financially necessarily, some of them were, but successful in achieving a life where they lived a life that they were proud of and that they wanted to live. So, for example, my dad ran a big construction and demolition business in Sydney, and he was financially successful, but he was also extremely happy. And he came on holidays with us, 5 or 6 times a year, and he was present and he was loving. And my mom was the same. And my dad passed away quite a few years ago now, and my mom still has a great life because my dad set it all up like that. And she's completely happy with her life. My grandparents ran a small baby wear store, and that was just a small business, and it was successful, but they weren't super wealthy, but they made sure that they did things that they enjoyed all the time. And I think growing up with that kind of historical desire to know that wealth is not just money creates a drive to help others find that. Because the worst thing for me is to want to go and do something fun and have no one around that's happy enough to go and do that with. So that's where the passion comes for helping people. It's a historical thing. And I mean, if we go back to the first ancestors of mine that came to Australia from Scotland, they were actually free landholders, like they were gifted land in Australia. And they went on to be farmers, some of them, but the other ones went on to sell cloth and material and linen and things like that. So I think people forget what helpful professions are. And I think when you go to Kmart to buy your clothes, which is totally fine, by the way, you don't think about, well, who made that? And before that, who actually dyed the cloth? And before that, who actually wove the cotton? And before that, who actually grew the cotton? And before that, who planted the seed? And before that, who bought the land? And there's again, energetic flow of these things that people are unaware of or disregard. And our ancestry and our lineage is so important. And there's not a single person on this planet who didn't have a successful ancestor, because if they didn't, they simply wouldn't be here. So success is your birthright. Success is in your bloodline already. And so many people just don't even see it.
And I really enjoy your breaking down of what success actually feels like and how it's so unique to all of us. And it's not, wealth is not just financial, because even though there's like, I know for myself, like, even though I'd like to say, you know, it's not just about financial, there's been up until actually really a lot in the last 24 hours, I was still so in scarcity, looking at money and focusing so much on money. And it's just so interesting because it's like my whole life is so beautiful in every other area, and it's still beautiful in that area, but it's like wealth is in all of these. Success, yeah, it looks like whatever you want it to, and how can we be fulfilled?
Yeah. And there's a concept of asking, how can I help you? And people are afraid to ask. And then when asked, people are afraid to answer. And the fear that is, like, I almost find it laughable because fear is not real. But the fear that people have around asking for what they want, getting what they want, creating what they want, is so dampening to the human spirit. And it's like, hey, look outside. Like right now, even just sitting here, I've got a window just in front of me. And I can see a cloud that has some gray and it has some white, and I can see a palm tree on the gray side of the cloud, but on the other side of the cloud is blue sky, and there's a palm tree there as well. And if I move my head slightly this way, then I can see the water. And it's like, how great is it to be alive today?
So
like, can we just get excited about the fact that we're alive? And then if you get to smile at someone, that's so great.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I woke up this morning and I'm in a mastermind and we're celebrations, and my celebration this morning, I had this moment where my partner was just like, we spend so much time cuddling, like we just spend so much time. It's just the best thing ever. Been together for 11 years. It's my favorite place in the whole world. And I was just laying there just going, fuck, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, owning it. I think that's something too, like just owning the areas of our lives where it does feel really good, so that more of that happens. But what I'd love to ask you about is fear, because you just started to speak into it a moment ago and you said fear's not real. What is fear?
So fear is an emotion, and emotions are caused by chemicals. And the chemicals in our body can be manipulated. And I use the word manipulated because that doesn't actually mean to hurt someone. The chemicals in our body can be manipulated by our physiology, by our focus, and by the meaning that we put on things. So when I say fear isn't real, fear is an emotional response, which is really just a chemical response. And so people say, but I'm really fearful, or you don't know what fear is, when I say things like this. But fear is only useful to create a different chemical response. The reason that we have fear is to run away from danger. So fear creates the chemical response. So there's a chemical response that creates fear, but then fear itself creates a chemical response, which is to increase adrenaline. And that gives us the power needed to run away from danger. So as an emotion, it's useful for about 2.5 seconds. James McNeil, who runs a course in miracles, says that anything more than 2.5 seconds is actually useless in fear, because it no longer provides us with what we need to run away from danger.
Wow. That's so simple. We've got a lot of fear going on in the world right now. So
yeah, well, that's the projection of the shadow, right? So we've got, if you look at Jungian philosophy, and you've got, the light side and the stuff we see in the external world, and then we've got the collective unconscious in the shadow. And what's happening right now is that the shadow has been flipped on its head, which means the shadow exists still, but the shadow that's currently there, the thing that people are unaware of, is the human spirit, is that ability to find wealth in being alive. It is that excitement, because the antidote to fear is not love, like most people say. love produces oxytocin. That's not really enough to overcome adrenaline. It's actually excitement. So what do you get excited about? Like, what's exciting to you? And for me, every freaking day is exciting. It's like, whoa, what can I get out of today? And then there's that thing of, what do you mean, what can I get? Yeah, selfishness is so important. If you can't look after yourself, how can you fix anyone else or help anyone else? Right? And the reason I use the word fix is because they think they're broken, not because I think they're broken. People are not broken. People just think they're broken.
Wow.
Right.
So excitement is the antidote to fear.
Yeah, if you look at
what are you excited about? And just move in that direction.
Yeah. So it's about moving towards. See, people have created this momentum where their motivation is away from. So they want to move away from poverty. They want to move away from being fat. They want to move away from, having a shitty job.
Yeah.
But what if we moved towards?
Yeah.
And what if our focus was towards? And, everyone knows how to lose weight, right? Everyone knows how to lose weight. More output, less input. It's really freaking simple. So what if we move towards health instead of away from fat? Because what happens when you move away from fat is so fat exists, at a certain point. You start moving away from it, and say once you get 20 centimeters, like if you laid your life out on a desk, once you get 20 centimeters away from fat, you're no longer fat. So then the motivation disappears. So then you get fat again.
Oh. And this comes back to desires too, which is something that you and I were having a little chat about. You pulled up a book that, cool, The 13 Steps to Riches.
Yeah.
And it's about desires. And I know the next book is coming out and it's about faith, but this all comes down to desires. And it's such an interesting society that we live in where we don't, and this is what you were just talking about, like moving towards our desires and actually claiming our desires, what it is that we actually want, what it is that we actually want to create. And can you speak into desires and maybe your...
So Napoleon Hill, which is where the concept of the book that we're writing at the moment comes from. So we're actually rewriting Think and Grow Rich. And instead of writing it as one book, we're writing each chapter as a book. So Napoleon Hill says that wishing will not bring riches, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches and backing those plans with persistence, which does not recognize failure, will bring riches. Right? So what do you have to do to have desire? You have to have obsession, right? A state of mind that's obsessed with getting what it is that you want. And then you have to have planning and organization, which really is planning, organization, implementation, and evaluation. And that is a cycle. And then you have to back it with persistence that doesn't recognize failure. Because there is no failure, there's only feedback. Right? There's no way you can fail. You're still alive.
Wow.
Like maybe if you want to build a rocket and you're not NASA, maybe you could fail and die, I guess. But most people aren't doing things like that.
And so with the people that you work with, because obviously you work with a lot of people, where is it that you help them with these desires? Like, where do they have to tap into? Is it a certain place in themselves? Is it like clearing something to actually just go, this is my actual desire, rather than like, what do you see when you work with people?
So that changes according to who it is that is obviously in front of me at the time. But as an example, what has happened is language has allowed people to create problems. Dogs don't have problems because they don't talk. So humans have problems because they talk and they don't understand their language, right? So if you say I'm stressed, then your unconscious mind will hear that you're stressed and will produce the appropriate hormone for you, which is cortisol. So now you've got cortisol surging through your body. So now your responses are going to be reactive instead of responded, right? So you're going to react rather than respond. And then your reaction is going to breed anger or fear or guilt or sadness potentially. And then you have to then try and respond from there. But those have their own hormones. So again, you're in reaction and you end up in this constant state of fight or flight, always wondering, where's my next meal coming from, even if you've got plenty of money. And in Australia, does anyone actually have to worry where their meal is coming from? Like actually, It just requires a question to ask for the right services. So and this all comes back again to that fear is not real. The things that we're frightened of at the moment are so ridiculous when you look at the numbers. Right?
Why is fear so consuming? Like, why is it this?
Because it's been perpetuated throughout generations. So then we go back to that generational stuff that I was talking about before, like what's your lineage? Where do you come from?
Yeah.
And because the tools and techniques of change were largely kept in the upper classes, if we go back to the 1500s, for example, the means of change were kept in the upper classes. And so that class system really created a lot of change for itself, and the poorer people were not able to keep up. And so we created this slave system and things like that in those eras. And that then created generational trauma. And as we go through generational trauma, someone has to be brave enough to step up and go, you know what, I'm willing to take it all, and I'm willing to get rid of it all. Problem is, what most people do is they turn up and they go, hey, this bad thing happened to me. It's like, cool. That's not really the real problem though. So there's a concept in integrated NLP called the map is not the territory, right? So people will come to you with a map and they'll say, this is my problem. This is what's wrong with me. This is where it is. And 99% of the time it has nothing to do with the real problem. And so when we understand energetics, when we understand eye patterns, when we can look at where people are actually accessing information in their brain, and then look at how that's displayed in their life, we can then start a process of what we call reprogramming, reprogramming the way that they think. So what they think is not much of a problem. How they think is a big problem. And the main problem in this society right now is what we call complex equivalences, where they say this means that, when it actually doesn't. Oh, my husband's late home from the office. He must be having an affair. It means he's having an affair. No, it just means that there was traffic, or he needed to do something else, or, you know, could it mean he's having an affair? Sure. But if that's the first thing you think about, then you're starting to create it.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing people don't realize is your words are creationary. Right? Dogs haven't learned how to build houses, but humans did. Right? Humans learned how that you didn't have to dig a hole in the ground to live in. You could actually create something and build it up and have it protected. We learned that through language and sharing information. But we also learned how to do trauma, and we learned how to have problems through language, because everything we speak is creationary.
And what's your opinion on trauma? Because I was actually, I don't know a lot. I've been in a lot of retreats where people have been moving through a lot of emotion and that kind of thing. And I've been with experts who know a lot about trauma, but I personally don't. And I actually was I was guest speaking this week, and a woman asked me about trauma, and I said, look, it's just not I don't know, because it's not my area. And like, where's the balance in like moving, like going, do you believe in going back through your trauma and feeling all there is to feel? Or do you believe, or it could be both, in like plugging into your brilliance and moving towards your desire? Or is it a bit of both? So does that make sense?
Yeah, what's interesting is the word.
Okay.
So the word trauma was a word from the 1690s, and it was a Latin word, and it meant a physical wound. So people call things trauma, but that's not actually what they're referring to. So the idea of a psychic wound or an emotional wound didn't actually come into being until after the 1900s. So for 300 years, trauma was a physical wound. And now all of a sudden it is, I stubbed my toe, trauma. My boyfriend left me, I'm in trauma. I have to give a speech, it's traumatic.
Yeah.
No, it's not really. You're not going to die. You're not going to die unless you choose to kill yourself, which is a choice, right? And so when I look at trauma, I look at, well, what's the person believe that their map is right now? What do they believe is possible? And are they just looking at this map in a 2D version? If I float up above the map and look down on it, well, where's the end of the map? What are the other options? What are they not seeing?
Yeah.
Because it really is just a programmed version of life. Trauma is a program. And the way that I know that is we do work with the Australian Army and the Australian Police Force, and we can help people who've been suffering PTSD for 10 years and have been through all of their programs and haven't got better, and then they come to us, and we can get rid of PTSD in 3 hours. It's just a construct. So it's something that they have created in a particular way. And all you need to do is discreate effectively the scaffold that is holding those ideas together.
And that comes back, like this is a huge conversation and about energetics, isn't it? Like this is the whole thing. I know you're so passionate about it. And I was with one of my girlfriends this morning. We were talking about this before we jumped on the podcast, but one of my girlfriends who Elizabeth knows, Jess McElveen, who's actually the episode before this, which is super cool. I was talking with her this morning. We're going for a walk around at the local park, checking out the roses that have all come into bloom because it's spring, and we were smelling them and it was just beautiful. And I was like, Jess, I've got Elizabeth on my podcast this morning. I'm a bit like nervous. Like this woman's very cool. And I'm like, do you have any tips? And Jess is like, she's like, Elizabeth is the most spiritual person I've ever met. She's like, she's going to take this conversation on the journey, which is cool. But yeah, she's worked with you around NLP in NLP, and she's been with you in different environments. And yeah, the role of energetics. What is energetics? Can you just, I know that's probably a big question too,
Nice.
but
I like this question.
Yeah.
So
I want to, there's a place that I'm leading us to that I'm like been tiptoeing, and I'm like, we're just going to fucking go there with faith and with all of that.
there.
Let's go there.
Right. So if we look at the word energetic itself, right, it means powerful in operation. Now, this is going to challenge for all the energetic people who are into the woo-woo. This is going to challenge the fuck out of you. And my goal is to challenge you because you've been sitting on the sidelines for a long time. So energetic means powerful in operation. It doesn't mean powerful sitting down meditating. It means in operation. It means in action, doing stuff, not powerful in being. And yet a lot of people who teach energetics and a lot of places that promote energetics and that talk about life force energy, talk about things like Reiki, and talk about any kind of energetics, promote this state of being. That is not energetic. Energetic is powerful in operation. And so when we start talking about energetics, if there's no movement, then there's no kinetic energy, right? And there's all different types of energy. And if you remember back to maybe year 9 science, you'll remember the types of energy that exist. And kinetic is the moving energy. Then you've got electrical energy, you've got radiant energy. Now, you can't radiate energy if you are sitting doing nothing. The sun is doing stuff all the time. The sun has got explosions going off. It's got nuclear fission happening in it. It's got these like solar flares. There's stuff happening all the time. It's in the doing. You've got gravitational energy. It doesn't happen without the world spinning, right? It's doing something. It's doing something. You've got potential energy. Now, that's the only energetics that can happen without a doing. And even then, there's previously been a doing that allows you to know there's potential. Wow. So when we look at, excuse me, when we look at energetics that way, and we look at the power in operation, the thing that frustrates me the most as someone who is not well known for my spirituality or energetic tenacity, the thing that frustrates me is the people who are being. Recognizing that, yes, there's a need to rest, that, you know, for some people, they believe that energy is not consistent and not self-fulfilling all the time. They may need to rest, but the rest is not where the energy is. The energetics are not in the rest period. The magic happens in the doing. It's in the operation of that. It's in the activity. And so when we then look at like energy or energetics in spirituality, or energetics in the movement of things around the planet, we then come to another word, which is spirited. And again, that means lively and energetic, right? And it's from the 1590s. And if we go like into some of the more, if we talk about things like life force energy and energetics that come from other places, then there's still a doing that happens. And the concept of feeling like you have no energy, or feeling tired, or feeling anything that slows you down is, to me, again, trigger warning for people, it's actually just your fucking laziness and your inability to understand energy, because energy is ever present and it's always there for you to draw on. There's no such thing as being non-energetic or non-able to access energy.
And so for anyone listening right now who's just like, I'm in that place where I'm just being, or I'm just like, what would be your recommendation, or what would be your advice as to where to start moving? Because it's like, those people, I don't know which action to take. Like, where do I start? How do I start moving? It
doesn't actually matter.
Okay.
People are so obsessed with, but what do I do first? Anything that's a doing. If you're running a business, do a live on Facebook or Instagram, and start talking to people, because as your words come out, people will talk back, and that's going to start creating things, and then you'll know what direction to step into. If you have a passion, then start creating in that passion. Like, if you want to be an artist, stop waiting for someone to tell you what to paint, and just paint. Just start putting paint on the canvas, because something incredible will come out of that. If you're a gardener, stop waiting for the right season, just plant the seeds. Just plant it and just keep growing it, and keep doing the actions. Because when you watch a real farmer, they know exactly what to plant and when to plant it. But the only reason they know that is because sometimes they tried planting it and it didn't work. So remember that bit about there's no room for failure. Failure doesn't exist. It's just learning. And if you want to fast track that kind of learning, then you need to understand the way that you think. You need to understand how your current programs are creating what's real for you right now. Because people look around themselves and they like to push everything outside of themselves, right? They create external objects for what's happening internally. But the truth is, the only person you can change is you. You can't change what's happening outside of you. You can only change you. And so if you've got problems in your relationship, stop trying to tell your partner that they're not doing a good job, or they need to do something else, or they need to be someone else, and start changing you. If you've got problems in your business, stop telling your staff that they're not pulling their weight, or stop telling customers that your suppliers aren't supplying, and do something different, because you can change you. And it doesn't matter where you go in the world or what you do, you can always change you. And if you get your own energetics right, then the energetics of everything else just flow, and it becomes easy.
And with this concept of you can change you, how many times in your life have you looked back and you've just done there's a full new Elizabeth that's come through, there's a new shift? Has it just been?
There's probably about 10 iterations of who I am, where I look back now and go, oh my God, that was me. Yeah, that was me. Like, I've been a flying trapeze artist. I've done really cool tricks on a flying trapeze, and I did that for many years. I've taught medicine at Sydney Uni. I've been a nurse. I have been, I used to work at a pool shop. I worked at Kmart. But there's times, like I worked at Kmart, Just Jeans, and a swimming pool shop. That was sort of one version of my life. And then I became really into the church at one point. And by the way, if you want a really good personal development book, regardless of your religious affiliation, read the Bible. It's got a lot of great advice in it, and it's really cheap. In fact, every hotel you stay in usually has one in the drawer. So if you want some light reading, I suggest Song of Songs if you're looking for sexuality, and Proverbs if you're looking for advice. But so I went really into the church for a long time, and, you know, went on missions overseas and helped people in all different countries. I then went through a phase where I donated eggs to people because I felt sorry that people couldn't have babies because of environmental factors and stress factors that left them unable to. And I've got genetic children that I haven't birthed that are beautiful. And that was another version. I was in an abusive marriage for 13 years. That's another version. I was a 36-year-old dating an 18-year-old and we stayed together for 5 years. That's another version. I have a colorful life and I have an exciting life, but the one thing that has rung true through all of it, except perhaps in the middle of the abusive marriage, is my tenacity and drive to help myself first and have that reflected in the way others speak about me and the way that others live their life regardless of how they speak about me. And what I mean by that is there are people in my life who've come across my path, who've participated in my trainings or have done workshops with me, who now don't like me and don't enjoy my company and don't agree with anything I say. And that's totally fine, because I look at their life and I still know that it's 100 times better than what it was before they met me. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing that I know I've created, is that even the people that hate me have had massive change. And I love that.
You have such an impact. Like the first time I actually met you, we were in a training at the beginning of 2020. You and I had similar mentors, and I was sitting on the front row on this mastermind. We were in a mastermind and you were also working with these mentors, but it was a room filled with people on the Gold Coast at the beginning of last year. And like, you're sitting in the crowd, but I'm like, I'm getting more value from this woman. I didn't really know you at the time. And I'm like, who is that? I'm getting more value from Elizabeth in the crowd when you were just like sharing, like the way that you impact and just how much you fucking claim your magnificence and your brilliance is just so inspirational. And it leads really beautifully into a conversation I want to have now around, actually, this is what Jess McElveen said about you this morning. She was like, she's just no fucks given. And I'm like, that's so true. I read one of your posts in the last week and it was about that. You had this beautiful photo of you on this gorgeous chair in a white dress, and the essence of the post was around that, like, I'm just doing this for me or something like. And there's another quote that I love that I saw another woman write, Blue, and she said, no, I'm just here to blow my own mind. And I just love it. So there's just a no fucks given approach with you, which is like, I just love you're embracing, I've got these people who don't potentially like me, but at the same time, I can see the impact I've had, and you're just doing it for you. Like, talk to us about that.
Well, who else is there? Like, this all goes back to energetics, right? So there is no duality. There's only oneness, which means that there's only me. If there's only oneness, there's only me. And everything that I've created outside of me externally is just a version of me. And so, yeah, there's been times I've hated myself. So of course there's going to be times when people hate me. Like, yeah, there's been times I've loved myself. So of course there's going to be people who absolutely love me. And, there are some crazy people who sort of worship me, and I think they're weird, but I also worship me. So why wouldn't they be there?
Yes.
There's nothing outside of us. We are oneness. And like, it's a concept that people can't get. Like, I am the same as the plant in the corner, which most people think it's plastic. It's not, it's real. I'm the same as the paint on the painting. I'm the same as the brass pineapple on the door that's above me. Like, I am the same. We're made of the same stuff. There's as much space in me as matter. And there's more space in me than matter. And there's more space in everything else than matter. And I'm just a whole lot of energy balled together in a meat suit. And, a plant just has a different kind. It's got a cellulose suit instead of a meat suit. And there is nothing that's not me. And when you recognize that, and you can see that everything, and including, the 13 years when I was in that abusive marriage, I can still see how he was me. And when you get that, the only person you need to look after is you. And when you actually look after you properly, everything else happens. Like we built $1 million business, and we've sustained that $1 million business since we built it. And it's gone the whole way through COVID, still earning well over $1 million. And we don't advertise. As in, we've never used a paid ad in our life. In like, you know, up until about 3 months ago, we started using paid ads. Like, and yet everyone goes, what? And then they go, oh, you must have a really good email list. No, I don't know. We've got about 1,000 people on our email list, and I think I've sent one email ever to everybody on the list. So I do everything the wrong way according to business. But I'd much rather have a word of mouth business and reach out to the people who I'm inspired to reach out to and grow my business that way than to grow something that becomes a monster that I don't even like. The evolutions in the business have gone from, you know, healing the wounded to creating entrepreneurs to now developing seasoned entrepreneurs. And the results are magnificent. But that's just a reflection of my growth. And so when people say, oh, I really want to do business coaching with you, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And if you actually want business coaching, you can go to someone who will give you a whole list of stuff you should do. Or if you're willing to admit that the reason your business isn't growing where it wants to is because of you, then I'm happy to work with you. Because the only reason a business doesn't grow is because the person running it isn't growing. Otherwise, businesses naturally grow. They're like humans. They are destined for growth. They're just an entity expression of us.
It sounds to me like you have a real ability in listening to yourself, and really, obviously you back yourself, but in really listening to yourself and to your, because, you know, does that reign true? Like your intuition maybe, or?
Intuition, yes. Intuition, yes. I think part of the problem is people listen to themselves too much. So they say stuff. So this is an experience I don't have, which for some of you may come as a surprise. If I ask myself, hey, what should I do today? Nothing happens in my brain. I don't get a list of things. I don't get noise in my brain. And for those of you that are what we call auditory digital, that talk to yourselves all day and get answers all day and then have to analyze 500 answers to see what you're going to say, you won't resonate with this part of it. I literally say yes to pretty much everything. And I've created my life in a way that the people surrounding me and the opportunities around me are only things I want to say yes to. So I am unable to have the experience of no or the need for boundaries, which allows me true freedom.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
About that?
Yeah.
So hang on. So is it just so my mind's trying to like get on board?
Yeah,
understand
there's
it.
A lot of quantum linguistics in that.
No, it's good. So have you set up an energetic within yourself with, because you're saying yes. So are there things coming into your world that you're saying yes to, and then you're getting into it and you're like, oh, that was actually no? Or is it just like because your energetic is so clean?
On point.
Okay. But why?
Why is always a disempowering question, because why implies that you are separate. It implies there's a reason. But what if there is
just
no reason?
Is?
It already is.
And oh my God.
There's like, why is the worst question in the world to ever ask? If you ask, why am I fat? The only answer you're going to get is one that makes you feel like shit. But if you ask, what can I do to stop being fat? I'm using fat because it's something everyone can resonate with, right? I think that most people can resonate with that, or they know someone who can.
Yeah.
So the question really is, how do you create a life that there's no need to escape from? Really?
Do you just choose it? Is it just like the choice of just You're just not? Is that what you're saying?
Well, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
Like, there's it, and people will go, oh, I could die, I could get run over by a bus. So I can see what normal thinking would happen there. If like you're breathing and your heart is beating, that is fucking miraculous. Right? There's a thing inside your body, the SA node and the AV node in your heart, that somehow just go and fire this electricity in your body. And it reminds your heart to beat. And then that creates electrical activity in your brain, which allows you to think. Like this is weird. If you think about it too much, it's actually weird. And then you can get this tiny little egg and a tiny little sperm and put them together and they grow a human. It's weird.
Yeah, I was literally saying this with Jess McElveen this morning. We're like this humans we're talking about how, can you believe we were little? Can you believe we were tiny little humans at one point? Now we're this. And we're just like,
when you were tiny little humans, when you were a tiny little human, even the humans that had horrific trauma happen to them at a very young age, there are periods of your life in childhood that you remember being happy. Whether it was only once climbing a tree, there is a period you remember being happy. So go back to that. Like when you walk through a park, if you like swinging on a swing, swing on a swing. Stop adulting and do what pleases you. Do what makes you happy. Do what creates joy in your life. You know, have a day off when you want to, if you want to, but do something fun. The concept of how have I created a life where I have to not say no? I guess there are people that I do not entertain. As in, there are some people who might want to be in contact or in circle with me, for example, and they would never get past the gates to even get to me for me to say a no. And so what I mean by that is there's a circle of people around me who are willing on their own. It's not something I've created, it's just happened, who are willing to support me and who see the work that I do and protect me in that. And so the only people that get close to me are people who I want to say yes to. Like, and to give you an example of that, when I first met you, I probably offered you crack, I don't remember, but I probably did. And then you sort of hung around and you kept messaging every now and then. And so you've shown tenacity, right? And so that for me is something that gets rewarded. So when you ask me to do this, I'm like, yeah, you've been around, you've stayed hanging around. Like, you're obviously intrigued enough and interested enough to still be there, which means that something of what I'm saying is either triggering the fuck out of you or you love it. And possibly both.
Yeah.
And I think that if people are willing to invest in you, then it's a sign that if you invest in them, something great will come of it. And an investment might be as simple as liking a Facebook post every now and then.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be this massive investment. And I guess some of that comes down to my deep faith in humanity. I believe that people are good. And I don't really believe in bad. So like, I don't believe in the duality. So there's only good and people are good.
And that would be reflected back to you because that's what you're living. Yeah. I feel like this conversation is coming to a really beautiful close. But before we do, I just want to chat to you a little bit because I know that the next book you have coming out is about faith. Yeah. And it's something that I don't know, I just have so much, it just brings me so much joy, like so much curiosity. Like I've really delved into it in the last 3 years and it just is so fun for me. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on faith and what that feels like for you and what that looks like.
I'll say it this way. You know how there's a fire in your belly and it doesn't matter if you want to give up. It keeps screaming at you. and I think a lot of your listeners will understand what I'm talking about. Faith is the belief in that. Believing that that's coming from a pure place. I mean, the actual meaning of faith, right? It's a 13th century word, so it's really, really old. And it is to trust or to promise. And really, faith is a trust or a promise in yourself. So the promises and the oaths and things that we make to ourselves that reside in faith are only upheld if we can pursue that faith. So believing in yourself when no one else believes in you. Really, really trusting that you have something incredible to offer. And for me, that is reflected by the fact that there's only a 1 in 300 billion chance that you exist genetically the way that you do. And because of that, there must be something incredible that you're destined for. Because it's not easy to get pregnant. I think the statistics are only 1 in 10 of every event that could result in pregnancy. So people who have sex at the right time of the month with healthy sperm and eggs, only 1 in 10 of them will result in a pregnancy. And then of the pregnancies, only 1 in 8 will make it to the first 4 weeks. And then of that, not all of them survive. You've already won the lottery. And the faith that you can have in yourself, and sometimes people need to externalize that. So faith in the universe, or faith in God, or faith in the plants, or faith in the water, whatever it is for you. If you need to externalize it, it's probably just a sign that you're an extrovert, or it could be that you're an introvert, and so you actually need at least one thing outside of you. Like, look around. If you're wondering where faith is, how the hell does a butterfly fly in the wind? How does a wave keep coming into the beach every day? Like, the sun rises every day. If you have no faith in anything else, at least have faith in that even when it's raining, the sun still came up over the horizon. And faith for me has been a journey. And when you get that book, the next book, and you read my story in that, it's incredibly moving. And it's the tenacity to know that the fire is never, ever going to go out. It's never going to go out. And it torments some people that try and put it out. And the easiest way, and you can see it, like if you look at bushfires in Australia, the easiest way to control a fire is with a fire. So what would happen if you just fed the fire instead of trying to dampen it down all the time? What if you just fed it and allowed it to burn bright so that everyone could see it? The worst thing that could happen is someone might throw water on you, in which case you just need a bit more oxygen and fuel, and perhaps a little bit more friction.
I love your love for life. I'm like, I love life, and you've just reignited the fire in me, the love for life. And I'm sure you have for everyone who's listening.
Thank you.
To Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us on Into the Nothing. There's no one like you. There's just not. You're the best. It's super cool. And the question that we always ask at the end of the episode, where can people find you? What link should I drop below so people can just access you?
See, this is why I have a team, and they're all busy. Elizabeth Ann Walker coaching on Instagram.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Ann Walker on Facebook.
Yeah.
ElizabethAnnWalker.com is the website. Is there anything else I need to? I'm probably Elizabeth Ann Walker on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect.
All of them. It's pretty much Elizabeth Ann Walker.
Yeah. And yeah, look out for this. The second.
Yeah, so it's called The 13 Steps to Riches, and it's volume 2, Faith.
Can't wait. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And thank you so much to everyone who's tuning in. And as I said, please let us know what it is that you loved, what you're confused about. Please share this, and feel free to subscribe. So love you. And I'll see you on the next episode, of course. Bye, guys.